I want to introduce someone to you. Her name is Georgia Fort. She is a two-time Emmy-nominated journalist. She has been published on CNN, ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS affiliates. Her mission as a storyteller is to change the narrative by amplifying truth, citing diverse sources, and contextualizing social justice issues. Georgia Fort, part of her story, this is just a part of it, lost her job in journalism after 10 years because she got pregnant, and her job was able to legally fire her for becoming pregnant. Georgia, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely, our pleasure. As I was saying in the green room, I came to know your work because of the advertising that I saw you on Facebook and on Instagram. And I was like, okay, because, I recognize the individual effort, the independent media work that you're doing, and that you believe in your work enough to actually put yourself out there, to put your name out there, to put your brand out there, to put your reputation out there. Tell us about where you are in terms of your work and your activism, your journalism, and everything that you're working on now.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, I was a mainstream anchor. I was, on in the morning, on in the afternoon, anchoring newscasts. And when I was not given maternity leave, it really made me pivot. And so I found myself in a place where I was asking myself, what am I going to do? And so, I did kind of reach out in my hometown and try to get hired. But as people know, in Minnesota, people saw, the world saw with George Floyd, there's a lot of systematic racism here. And so for one reason or another, I was not hired in this market, but that did not deter me from telling our stories. I just eventually came to this epiphany that I don't need to be affiliated with a network to get out here and amplify voices in our community. And so I just unapologetically started doing what it is that I do best. And, the community has received that. Even individuals outside of this market have received that. And I think, because we are in a climate where so many people are criticizing fake news, criticizing media for being biased or leaning left or leaning right, there is this huge desire for independent voices. And so it is a great time to be an independent journalist. And the last thing I'll add is, I love my curly hair, but when I was in mainstream media, I couldn't wear my hair like this. Oftentimes when we see Black women on TV, their hair is straight, and that becomes a part of their contract. So, one day I did come to work curly because I had some things come up, flat tire, the unexpected happened, and I just didn't have time to straighten it. And I actually got in trouble. I got pulled into office by my superior, who told me I didn't have permission to wear my hair like this. And if I did it again, that I would be written up.
It's very interesting that you talk about that because, Georgia, I have the same exact story. It's funny because when I first got out of, graduating from the #1 HBCU in the nation, FAMU, but when I first got out of school, I literally was told I used to wear my hair straight. I couldn't wear my nails a certain kind of way. That's the only way that they would hire me in these mainstream media places. And then I felt like my voice was taken from me. I couldn't really speak on certain issues because it would come off in a way that was biased, right? And we're supposed to be unbiased. But how can I, as a Black woman, not discuss this issue happening to Black women in a way that people can relate to? And then when I went off and separated and got into this politics world, I was able to use my voice a little bit more. But even in that world, it was in independent media as well. It was almost structured where they wanted me to just discuss Trump and not Colin Kaepernick. And then I had to make sure I got to push that to the side. I had to sacrifice as well. So hearing your story, it's so funny because your story is my story and a lot of other Black and brown girls' story when it comes to mainstream media. When you're working as an independent journalist, and kudos to you. You're doing a really, really good job. Really good job. But now you're working as an independent journalist. How does it feel? What's the difference? Were you able to do the stories that you wanted to do in mainstream media? Like when you pitched them, when they had something to do with race or social issues, how was your voice different from the mainstream media to you now being in an independent world?
Yeah, when I was in mainstream media, there definitely were challenges. I definitely had times where I felt like my voice was being silenced. And an example of that, I was covering an officer involved shooting. In this incident, the man actually didn't die. He was injured and arrested. And so, number one, you can't refer to him as a victim, which I didn't agree with, but that is the way that they wanted to present the story. And when you talk about narrative and the impact that that has, by not being able to call someone who has been shot a victim, removes a sense of empathy already from the story. In addition to that, I was immediately instructed to go and find that man's criminal history. And so when you're in media, you do want to be balanced, you do want to be unbiased. So I said, okay, if that's my assignment, if that's what I have to do, I'm also going to go and find the complaints that have been filed against that officer. There were 12 pages of complaints. 4 of them were racial profiling specifically. I had a Black officer who's on the force who pulled me aside when nobody was looking, shook my hand and thanked me for telling this story. I had a veteran who had been on the force and worked with that guy previously, who, also reached out and said, yeah, this guy is racist. And so, in addition to that, they didn't even let me put that in the report. And so I couldn't understand how you want me to go ahead and tell this guy's criminal history. And here we have all of this evidence that has been vetted and backed by so many sources that this cop is racist, but we can't include that. And the reason why, and I went to bat to include that information, but the reason why that was never included was because they said they didn't want to piss off the police department, because they depend on them for so much of their information. Yeah. And so that is a very clear example. And I'm not saying that all newsrooms are like that, but that is a very extreme example of how mainstream media can become to be one-sided. And so as an independent journalist, I absolutely have the autonomy, the freedom, the liberty to go ahead and publish that information because it's facts. However, I will say, as an independent journalist, the challenge that you face now is getting the other side. So community, a lot of times, trust me to tell the community side, but I'm still a journalist. I still do want to be balanced and fair. So now when I'm reaching out to government agencies or I'm reaching out to police entities to try to get that other side, they're not as quick to talk to me because I don't have the following that these legacy media has. Luckily, I do have a network here in this community. And so I have had some success with that here locally, but abroad, it is a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I'm thinking about all the different ways that your story is actually replicated across this country. Like Rebecca's shared a piece of hers, and I'm thinking of just the number of Black journalists that I've seen go through that exact thing. My question for you is in terms of your platform that you're building, because you're working on something, you're building something, and that's what, that's really what caught my eye in the first place, is that you're out here building something. What are you building? Are you releasing your content as individual clips? Are you doing what are some of the goals? Because there's a lot of alignment, and I want to make sure that people who are watching us now, especially the Pride and the chat rooms, all the people who support us, can know where and how and what to expect when they start consuming media from Georgia Fort.
Absolutely. So independently on my platforms, I am currently focused on building my audience and telling authentic stories. And so, the other piece to that is making it sustainable. I am a mother. I do have a family. And so it's challenging. I think the other piece to being independent is, how do you fund this? Because I don't get a paycheck every 2 weeks. And so when you talked about, like covering social justice issues and how does that impact you? A lot of people don't know. Yeah, you can throw your Cash App out there, your Venmo out there. Some people respond to that. But like these platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they all have, and even YouTube, they all have different structures to monetize. So there is a way that you can sustain. However, it is even that much more challenging for someone like me to make this work sustainable, because advertisers do not want to put their ads in videos that are discussing social justice issues. For me, I'm losing out on, ad dollars because I'm not doing beauty tutorials. I'm losing out on ad dollars because I'm not doing DIY videos or mommy videos. And those are all great, and they all have their place in our society. However, I do believe that news that amplifies the Black experience also has a place. And so what I have identified in terms of making this work sustainable is it's really going to take the community to get behind it. And so I'm not very aggressive about saying, subscribe, become a supporter, Cash App, Venmo, but that is truly the only way that I'll be able to continue to do this work. So when you come and you follow Georgia Ford, what you can expect is maybe not, the 5 o'clock news every day. I'm not in a position where I can produce stories every single day. But what you can expect is when I do produce a story is that it has been well thought out. It's done in quality. I have fact checked. I have reached out. I'm doing exclusive interviews, enterprise interviews. And 9 times out of 10, these are stories that you're not going to find in mainstream media. One of the last stories I did published some footage of a police officer joking with an unarmed Black man about a murder in progress. And it was disgusting and it was disheartening to hear that type of sentiment just made light of. And the young man who this happened to actually did an interview with me, and he said it very well. He said, "This is a mockery of all the Black people who have been killed by police. And there has been no discipline for that officer." And to me, actions, they do start out as words. And so if police in the state of Minnesota, after seeing what happened to George Floyd, are not going to crack down and put their foot on these officers' necks when they're out of line, we're going to continue to have more George Floyds in this country. And so that actually, even after putting that story out there, it did force the Brooklyn Park Police Department to issue a statement about it. But mainstream media never picked that story up. And if you ask me, I do think even still today that is a very important story that needs to be discussed as we're approaching the George Floyd trial in 14 days. Outside of that, more recently, I have been doing a lot of coverage around like the homeless encampments, the evictions. When you turn on mainstream media, you hear the mayor talking about their plan to, attack homelessness. You hear the governor, you hear all of these government officials, but how often are you seeing mainstream media go out to where these tents are and talking to those people themselves and verifying the information? Because the mayor and the city officials, they make it sound great. Oh, we're offering all of these things. We're giving them a room. We're giving them this. We're doing all of these things. But that is not the same narrative that you hear from the people who are actually homeless and in Minnesota living in below zero temperatures. And so I have done extensive coverage on that is not seen anywhere else. So that is what you can expect when you follow me. And last thing, I'll wrap this up quick, is I just launched my company, Black Press. And so I do identify that our community is not a monolith. I don't think that I can tell all of our stories by myself. And so Black Press will be a community for other independent journalists to find resources, to be compensated, to find the tools and the information that they need to grow their platforms. So simultaneously, while I'm building out my platform, I want to take all the knowledge and the resources that I'm finding that are helping me and share that with other independent journalists. Wow. And then also create it as a platform so that people who are in search of diverse voices can come and find stories even beyond just the ones I'm reporting.
Wow.
Georgia, that is amazing. Your whole story, like I said, is something that we all share. Black women who have come from mainstream media, who've had to walk away from it, not by choice sometimes, but we had to make a way for ourselves. And to fund that, it's been difficult, even in this space right now, with me being on this show and us being blessed to bring you on this show. And then you being able to go independent, but also create Black Press to allow other voices, because you understand that Black voices is not a monolith. Like you said, it's just not one way. And we can't tell all the stories. There are other people who it's their niche in those areas where they can tell those stories. And I'm very grateful for you doing what you do in this space. And you are a mommy, you can do it all. To whoever who had you before, they lost a really, really good thing, but they don't even know the power that you have now, but what you are about to be. So congratulations to you on that, everybody. And you said that was like blackpress.com. Was that what it was?
BLCK, blackpress.com. Yeah.
Make sure you guys get to
that. I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome. And make sure you follow her. And where can they follow you?
at Georgia Ford, at by Georgia Ford on all social media platforms, or you can just go to my website, georgiaford.com.
georgiafort.com. And everybody, I'm assuming you have a YouTube page as well.
Yep.
And so if we can, one of the producers, would you grab a link to her YouTube page? I want to make sure that we post it in the chat room before the end of today's episode. Everybody go over there and subscribe to Georgia Ford. And we'd love to have you back. If you ever have any story that needs to be amplified, we'll be more than happy to use our platform because we got to squad up in this independent media space, but more specifically, this Black independent media space. We all need each other. So anything we can help along the way, just let us know.
We got you, girl.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. You all have a wonderful day.
You too.
You too.
You too.